Even lawyers face workplace harassment. Don't speak up. Even though they know what to do, they're lawyers. They know their rights. And that's how difficult and challenging the situation it is, right?
We see a lot of companies say that they have these processes, this system, non-retaliation policy, whistleblowing, your privacy will be maintained. But in reality, many employees still don't feel or trust that these systems and process will protect them, and thus they are afraid to speak up, which leads to a lot of them just, for lack of a better word, just tolerating it, just sucking it up.
If you just have a policy but you never properly implement it, if the leaders don't get behind it, right? If they don't assure you that if something happens, this is how it will be handled and we will make sure that that's the case. There isn't really any belief that it's just more than a piece of paper. I think another weak point that you see commonly, the HR function is not independent complaints avenue. People still perceive HR as, but you work for the employer, you always take the boss's side. So people then don't trust that HR will actually not go straight to the boss and then say, hey, fire this guy lah, it's easier, right?
Welcome back to another episode of Wise and Shine. I'm your host, Dawn, budget babe and author of Take Back Control of Your Money, joined with Alex.
Hi everyone, this is Alex Low. You can find me on social media, Alex Low, the Growth Connector.
Today's topic is a really interesting one. Actually, I say that every episode, but really kudos to our producer who comes up with all these amazing and very timely topics. It resonates a lot with me because I see it, and I have been a victim of this, in fact, in the past. We are going to look at how harassment and bullying has moved from physical to online. And in case you think that this is only on a personal level, no, it's not, because workplace harassment and bullying is starting to move even to platforms such as Slack, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, or Facebook, which could come with several repercussions.
And Singapore, I think our laws, as well as HR systems, might not have really caught up with what you need to be doing or what you could probably be doing for yourselves, right? So what qualifies as workplace harassment or bullying? I think that's something you might want to know or you might have questions about. What legal protections actually exist, and where are there certain gaps that you might need attending to? And of course, last of all, how to protect without risking relationships or reputation.
So to help us address this topic, we got one of the best experts, in our opinion, to join us on set. Her name is Simran, and for those of you who might be familiar with the work that she do, you may have come across her. She was the former CEO of SG Her Empowerment, Singapore's first online harms help center. And she led national efforts on digital safety, gender equity, as well as access to justice. Simran has also set up the Women in Practice Committee and launched an anti-harassment guide on workplace harassment in the legal profession. So I think there is no one better than her to help us address and learn more about this topic today. So welcome, Simran, to Wise and Shine.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the glowing introduction.
Your work deserves to be spoken of. Is there anything you'd like to add on for our audience who have not seen or heard of you before?
I guess I would add to all of this is that throughout my legal career, I would of course do employment cases and see my own clients. And I think I'm one of those people who are a bit idealistic. So if I see something that's not fair or someone's facing discrimination or not being treated right, I always feel like I want to do something. And that's why I think I stood up for election in the Law Society to begin with. And then I decided I will start a women's committee there. Within the women's committee, we looked at research from Singapore and around the world and realized that, hey, even lawyers face workplace harassment, right? Even lawyers who are facing workplace harassment don't speak up. Even though they know what to do, they're lawyers. They know their rights. And that's how difficult and challenging the situation it is, right? So while I was at the Law Society, we launched a anti-harassment template that has certain, I suppose, guides on what is harassment. It's very difficult for people to know, is this harassment or is it not? Right? Is this just bad behavior or is it harassment? Where do you draw the line? And what's legal and what's illegal, right? After that, I got involved in advocacy for online harms. The government realized that women and girls were facing online harms a bit more disproportionately than boys and men. And so they set up something called the Sunlight Alliance for Action, which was like a public-private, maybe task force, you want to call it, with lawyers, teachers, academics, digital specialists, all putting their minds together to think of, okay, let's identify the problem. How bad is what's happening online? What is happening online? What are people suffering? And how should we as a society, including by laws, help? So at the end of that Action for Alliance, it was found out that I believe 66% of Singaporeans have experienced harms online, harassment being one of the more popular ones, online harassment. But the majority, just when it happens to them, don't know what to do. And there was actually a growing number of people developing the belief that, oh, it's just a normal part of life lah. You want to be online, you want to communicate with people online, this is just what you have to deal with.
Yeah, that's what people have told me. If you want to
Absolutely.
be online, you just have to suck it up and deal with it.
That's right. You want to put your picture online, you deserve all the comments you get, which logically shouldn't be the case, right? And what will happen in the long run, and there's research that's starting to back this up, is that people will stop wanting to use online tools. They will withdraw because of the risks. They'll say, I'd rather not then. I will just take my chances and try to go back to the physical world.
But there are a lot of people that choose not to go online because of this specific
absolutely.
reason.
And that's not exactly a good thing because there's so many benefits you can get from exposure online. Let's say you don't join LinkedIn, you will miss out on all the networking opportunities, right? Simply because of the fear or the potential that something bad could happen to you there. So at the end of the Alliance for Action, one of the recommendations was that we need to have in Singapore a one-stop shop for people who have experienced online harms. So I put my hand up and I said, okay, I will set up this organization. So what we offered there was three things, right? Come to us, we will help you report. You can either report it to the online platform, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Or if it's a criminal case, we'll help you report to the police. The second thing was counseling. All right, if you are not feeling good about what happened to you, how can we help? And there were counselors on site that would help. We also had an arrangement with the police, which I think was a first, that for very serious sexual assault cases that also have an online element, the police would actually come to the center and in a pilot program to see, maybe minimize the discomfort for the victim and take the statement of the victim there. What happened was, we found that on average, people were coming to see the counsellor, not one, not two, not even 5 times, but 12 to 13 times for each person. Meaning for each incident, the hurt cut so deeply that they felt they needed, on average, about those amount of sessions with a counsellor
10 to 12 sessions
to
at
make
least.
themselves feel whole. It just shows how serious these things can affect, how seriously they can affect people. And we shouldn't just think just because it's a message online that can pop up so quickly and can be deleted so quickly, it has no impact. It does, and the impact is actually quite potentially serious. I think, back to the topic of today's podcast, one of the more common things people go to see the centre for is harassment. So it's one of the more common online harms. Sometimes it happens out of the workplace and social media, but equally, it can happen in the workplace.
And in today's society, how has workplace harassment of the past shifted to how it looks like today?
There have been a couple of power shifts, I guess, in online harassment in the workplace in the last 15 or so years. It doesn't have to take place physically anymore, right? You don't have to be there to physically say words to a person for there to be harassment. Now you've got Slack and Teams and WhatsApp and everything, all these other methods of doing it. In a sense, it makes it easier for the harasser because it gives them much more tools, right? What it also gives them is the ability to access you 24/7 if they wanted to. And there are some harassment cases where they in fact do, right? So the power shifted towards the harasser that way. But I would say it's not all doom and gloom. The harassees or the victims actually are now much more aware of their rights, the recourse, what is right and wrong. And even the government through the TAFEP, which is the Tripartite Alliance for Fair and Progressive Employment Practices. It's a mouthful, so I'll just say TAFEP. They also have come out to say, harassment is wrong. Workplaces should have proper systems to deal with it, independent systems to investigate. You should not retaliate when an employee files a harassment complaint. So these are all very good signals to show that workplaces also need to up their game. So although the power may have shifted to allow the harasser better ways to harass, I think the victims and the employees also have a lot more tools and resources than they used to before, which is great.
Do you see that these online platforms have created new grey zones of power and visibility?
It's created easier access, right? As long as there is a place for someone to put out a message about you or contact you directly and communicate with you directly, those are access points where harassment can take place, right? So I think modern day life exposes us a lot more to harassment than we would have previously. So if it's not just your employees or senior people that would typically be the ones that could harass you anymore. It can be your clients. It can be people that you meet in a work context at a networking event, but that maybe you haven't even met in person yet, right? But they're still reaching out to you through the direct messaging function. I think, yes, I guess the gray zone is out there online through all the online interactions that you never were open to before, but now are allowing access to basically the world at large to contact you. Not everyone will contact you with good intentions.
And where exactly does the Singapore law draw the line in terms of determining what is harassment, which is something illegal, versus something that is this is still okay, we can accept it?
No, that's a good question. So maybe we'll start with what is illegal. So there's the Protection of Harassment Act, which was introduced in 2014, maybe in the earlier days of social media, all right? So it criminalizes harassment, makes it a criminal offense to harass. And what is needed to prove that criminal offense? So you will be able to call the police if there was threatening, abusive, or insulting words or actions used that intended to cause you harassment, alarm, or distress. So threatening, abusive, and insulting words or actions that were to cause you harassment, alarm, or distress. So it was either intentional or the harasser knew it was likely that you would be harassed, right? So that's the threshold for a criminal offense. But of course, there are a lot of actions that don't meet this criteria, right? Which is not a criminal offense, but which is still bad. I've heard the term lawful but awful actions thrown about, which is not illegal, but it's really not pleasant. So I think that's the threshold that people may not be aware of.
Can you give some examples of these lawful but awful?
So I think a common one is micromanagement, right? Your boss is always looking over your shoulder, but he's not using threatening or insulting words to you, right? Another common one is silent treatment. I don't say or do anything to you. I just cut you out from all the company lunches, remove you from the WhatsApp group. Another one could be, let's say, a particularly blunt work review, right? You didn't do well and, not framed very nicely, but it's not threatening, it's not abusive, it's not insulting. And the intention was to give you feedback, right? Not to harass, alarm, or cause you distress. I mean, I'm just giving you rough examples.
What
Every
if
case
that
is different.
work review was not communicated in person or within a very small circle of whoever needs to know, but posted on a more public platform such as on LinkedIn?
So it really depends on the intention and what you know it likely to do. So if it's so public as in LinkedIn and the way you phrase it is such that you know it's likely that when the victim reads it, they will be distressed. Oh gosh, the entire industry knows that I failed and at this project, I may disagree with your assessment of me, right? So not only is it potentially defamatory if it wasn't true, it can also likely cause harassment, alarm, or distress. It could cross that threshold. So the important thing about harassment cases is that you really have to look at the specific facts of that one situation. There's really no one size fits all or to say, oh, this is harassment and this is not, right? You have to look at the circumstances.
Because everybody's threshold is also different, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and where the information was communicated, how it was communicated. A lot of times, the history of your relationship will go towards showing the intention behind the making of that statement. So let's say you are my boss and you are harassing me, all right? And at some point down the line, I've said, hey, I think this is inappropriate. Please don't do it. It makes me feel distressed. But you continue. Then before that, you could have come up with the excuse to say, no, I never intended to cause you distress. But now I have put down the boundary. Now you know if you continue, you will cause me distress, right? So a lot of it's to do with the personal relationships the boundaries and, the things that have been communicated between both parties.
You talk about intent as well, but as we always say, intent is always tricky to grasp because the only person who has the right answer is the perpetrator themselves or the harasser. And that person could always act innocent and say, no, this was never my intent. This is what you thought my intent was, but my real intent was something else. And there's no one else who can accurately say that's right or wrong. So how do you draw the line?
So you are right. And that's probably what most harassers would say, is I didn't intend to, which is within their rights to do. But that's when circumstantial evidence comes in, right? So if you've had the context that I mentioned before of the relationship where you've drawn a boundary, it becomes a lot harder for them to stick to that story. Right? If you've got trails and trails of messages that you have kept where they say particularly nasty or insulting things to you, right? You can just build up the evidence that way. And then you have enough to show, okay, the only conclusion must be that they did have this intent or that they knew it's likely.
What if the employee tells the manager that, hey, I disagree with that work review that you posted on LinkedIn or Slack for the whole company to see, or that it is causing me distress. Could we take this privately? And the manager then says, my intent was never to cause you distress. I just think this is public and everyone should know so everyone can help you improve. Does the victim still have a recourse in this case?
Yeah, so that's the part where you get into thorny issues on whether the company has a policy, like an anti-harassment policy, on how to deal with this. So if there is a policy in place, a good one will have a formal complaints process, a formal escalation process. So you've tried one time with your manager, it's not worked, and you believe that harassment has taken place. Usually your first, or I guess, order of business is to go and see, is there a policy? What are the steps I should take? Let me follow this. And it might say, okay, report to your immediate line manager or to your HR, and you follow that, you lodge the complaint, and in an ideal world, there will be an independent investigation done into it. Both parties will be spoken to, for example, and then a conclusion that hopefully doesn't disadvantage the employee simply because they have complained. So a good policy will have, in other words, a non-retaliation requirement as well.
A situation like this, you escalate directly to HR, right? You don't need to escalate to the police because it's not a serious kind of harassment. Would you say that? Or because you're still part of that company system and it's not like a client or a vendor that is making responsible for the harassment?
So criminal harassment may well happen in the workplace. I think then it's up to you to sit down, perhaps with your lawyer or your trusted advisor, to say, look, there are two complaints I can do now, right? One, I can lodge a police complaint, right? And if I do, what's going to happen to my workplace relationships? At the same time, I still have to work every day. What should I do in the office? What process should I follow? And how should I go about it? So there are two possible tracks that can happen at the same time. But you really got to think carefully, like how you want to do it, how you want to time it.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying Wise and Shine so far. I'm your host Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut, and for us to continue to do this show so that you become a tad bit wiser every week, you gotta like, share, subscribe, help us beat the algorithm. But even more importantly, if you can, comment in the comment section below. Let us know your thoughts and also some questions that you would love us to answer. Yep, now back to the show.
How much are these systems really working for the average person? We see a lot of companies say that they have these processes, this system, non-retaliation policy, whistleblowing, your privacy will be maintained. But in reality, many employees still don't feel or trust that these systems and process will protect them, and thus they are afraid to speak up, which leads to a lot of them just, for lack of a better word, just tolerating it, just sucking it up when it shouldn't have to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to the example of the lawyers who are experiencing harassment and they don't do anything about it, right? I mean, it's really not easy. And I think there are a few reasons why, even with a paper policy, the culture in the company is not such that people feel, yes, I trust that I can make a report. I trust it will be handled independently and well, and I trust nothing is going to happen to me. Why is there this lack of trust? It's cultural, right? It comes down to leadership signaling. If you just have a policy, but you never properly implement it, if the leaders don't get behind it, right? If they don't assure you that if something happens, this is how it will be handled, and we will make sure that that's the case. If every employee is not going through training from time to time to say, this is right, this is wrong. If there's an harassment, report, this is how it will be handled. It could be for you one day, it could be for you one day, but trust it will be treated, everyone will be treated equally. There isn't really any belief that it's just more than a piece of paper. I think another weak point that you see commonly, particularly in smaller companies or SMEs in Singapore, is that the HR function is not really let's call it a independent complaints avenue. People still perceive HR as, but you work for the employer, you always take the boss's side. Your main responsibility is maybe just payroll, I apply for leave, I apply through you. They're not considered to be independent stewards of the culture of the company. So people then don't trust that HR will actually not go straight to the boss and then say, hey, fire this guy lah, it's easier, right? So I think there are a lot of areas that can be improved. Obviously, introducing a proper policy is a wonderful first step. But then to implement it and make everybody believe and trust that it will be followed, that is probably the missing step. And I think the last thing that's probably unique to more to Asian countries is, and we still have it in Singapore, you don't really want to question your superiors. As a matter of culture, no matter what your elder is doing, you just, okay, as they say, just put up with it, tahan, and don't call them out. So I think that's also part of it.
I think earlier you mentioned that if someone is experiencing harassment at work, first thing to do is to sit down with an advisor or lawyer, right? What are certain things that could potentially prevent someone to even want to sit down with an advisor or lawyer? I think that's the first thing that we want to get through. And also, what are certain things that can help this person's case and, not make this person's case worse?
I think to the first part of your question, not wanting to sit down with an advisor or lawyer, that could be sort of a psychological thing where you finally have to accept that something is so bad that you need to see a lawyer. It's the acceptance, and you may not want to think that, okay, now I really have to make it bigger than it ever needs to be. So what I found, and I think it would apply to lawyers as well, is going back to the She Cares Center, the online harm center. In the first year, we found that people were coming through the doors to seek help. But the kind of cases we were seeing is not just a one-time harassment, two-time. It was those severe, prolonged, long-term cases that were coming. So people don't actually go and seek help until they really cannot take it anymore. Things have gotten to the degree where it's so serious that you have to sit down to a lawyer. I mean, it's a bit life-changing, right? Because once you start the ball rolling, there's almost no turning back.
And it could be quite a long-drawn process.
It can be. Even if it's internally investigated, it can take months. So it's a lot for them to realize that I need to go through this. Then I'll need to talk to the investigator. Then I need to think about how I will deal with my team members. Then I need to think about how I will deal with the offender, after everything is resolved. So it's almost like not wanting to deal with it until you literally have no more choice. Then you will go and seek help from someone. Yeah,
what is the ultimate recourse then? So let's say they've tried all means, they've tried to talk to the perpetrator, they've escalated it to HR, but HR is not really helping or just, brushing it off, dismissing their concern. And they've tried to talk to people that are thought could help, but nothing is still being done and the harassment is still continuing. Their last resort might be then to go to the courts, to engage a lawyer to help them fight the case. But aside from being very long drawn, as you guys have mentioned, the cost could also be a thing, right? Something that deters them. What kind of costs and time could we potentially be looking at?
Well, I mean, it depends on the lawyer you go to, but it would be in the thousands, right? Typically. And it's there is actually a middle ground that we haven't talked about yet. That if you've tried talking to your employer and they haven't done anything about it, and you feel you're hitting a brick wall there, you can go to TAFEP and ask for their help. And what they will do is they'll probably give you some basic advice about what you can do. And they can even contact the employer to encourage them to do the investigation, make sure that it's independent. So, I mean, I would suggest people explore that resource and route before going all out through a proper legal process. But of course, yes, legal process for most people is the choice of last resort. Yeah, because there's no turning back after that.
We received a question from one of our listeners that really captures the emotional and practical difficulty of the situation. So this is the question, right? Is the only answer for victims to quit? I currently know 3 women, 2 facing sexual harassment, 1 workplace bullying. HR doesn't care. Management gaslights them, and it's destroying their mental health and reputation. But not everyone can afford to quit. And even if they do, what happens when a new employer asks why they left?
Well, I'm not sure you're going to really like my answer, but I mean, if you really have tried everything, including calling up TAFEP, and you've decided perhaps that I'm not going to take legal action against this employer because I assess that it's going to make it really hard for me to get another job, right? I'll be the person who sues my employer. And let's say this is a small industry like maybe law. Everybody will know within 15 minutes, right? So you make a decision. Sometimes it's not just about who's in the right and who's in the wrong. It's about preserving your mental health and your well-being. That you decide, okay, I've thought about it, I've spoken to my advisors, and I think I will just leave. It's in my best interest, for my mental health and my peace of mind to move on. That may be that's a very realistic thing that can still happen, right? The imbalance of power is still there.
But what do they then say when the new employer asks them, why did you leave?
That is part of what you need to do. You need to really prepare your evidence before you leave, right? And have a very cogent story of why you left. That makes sense to employers as well. I mean, this goes beyond the realm of my expertise. It's probably more like a comms or HR thing. But without pointing fingers so directly to say I was harassed by my last lawyer, so I left, you can say things that suggest that it was not a conducive work environment for you. There were factors about it that was not sustainable, or you just wanted to build your skills somewhere else. It's very rare that, at least in my estimation, it will come down to the new employer saying, "Prove to me why you left. I want to see all the emails." So ultimately, you will just be having it in your back pocket. If there's some bad rumors going on around the industry about you, have them ready. If you need to use it, go and seek a lawyer to make sure you're not breaching confidentiality. But you'll be able to construct a narrative that helps you. And you need to have that ready in your back pocket, I would say.
I guess it also depends on how senior you are in the role and the industry that you're in, right?
Yeah, very much so, I'd say.
Yeah, this reminds me of a drama that I watched recently. I know it's drama, not real life.
K-drama?
No, it's a China drama. But I thought it really captured the reality of Asian females who deal with this situation where that lady was a journalist and she was sexually harassed in the workplace. She rejected the harasser and he just made her life very difficult in front of everyone else. The harasser was very senior and had connections with a lot of people in the industry because the news and publishing industry, even across cities, is just that small. So she, in the end, had to move cities. She literally left her entire life, moved to a brand new place where no one knew her. And obviously when the new employer asked that kind of stuff, I don't think that came out. She did very well in that place until a rumor resurfaced. And then that made her life in that new firm, new city, really difficult again. But there was a happy ending to that story because she did find an advisor who later on was, it became her husband. And that guy guided her, gave her support. So in the end, she spoke up against the former harasser. And she was very lucky that her new employer, because already they can see her track record, they defended her.
Yeah, that's great.
But not everyone might have such a happy ending. So instead of having to move cities, especially in Singapore, where
what city
you can't
move to,
moving from Punggol to, Sengkang is not going to make much of an impact. And the harasser could, in the story, be good friends with your new employer. How should they delicately handle this situation then?
I think this goes back to why it's so important to have an anti-retaliation clause inside your policy. So within the workplace, to everyone, it needs to be made extremely clear that not only is this meant to be dealt with totally confidentially, you're not supposed to release the fact that there's an investigation or an issue to anyone other than those involved in the investigation. Once it's over, there should be no actions taken that could be viewed as revenge or retaliation, like spreading rumors to say she made a false allegation against me, she's like this, she's like that. or cutting her out from promotions, or making her working day environment so untenable that they have to leave. That's clear retaliation, and it should not be allowed. In fact, she can make another complaint, right? So a complete policy not only says this is harassment, defines it, defines also how an investigation is supposed to be conducted. It also defines what happens after, right? And the only way it will work is that if all three parts are there and everybody believes that they are bound by it. It cannot be that the big boss says it applies to all of y'all, but not me. In fact, they need to be the ones who really get behind it and speak up about it the most for everyone to trust that it will be followed and followed fairly.
And short of going through the legal means, and let's say the victim has tried all different ways, what would your advice be to victims who are considering whether or not to just post their side of the story on the same platform or on the same social media that the harasser used to publicly harass them?
Oh my God, I'm a lawyer, so I'm going to say just wait first. Talk to your lawyer. Make sure that you get advice, because you don't want to pile on another problem into your life, which is getting into issues of defamation. Right? If they've said something defamatory about you, you go after them. Don't add something so that they can point a finger back at you. Don't give them any more weapons, is what I would say, just, as a starting point. But I know that emotions can run high. But if there is the ability to take a step back and think and check first before you post, that would be my legal advice.
So do not give in to your emotions and post back something on the same platform. I realize so far we've all talked about cases where the harasser is known, but we completely forgot to address the possibility that the smear campaign or the LinkedIn post or the Slack maybe not Slack, but it could be from an anonymous person. The victim thinks that they know who based on certain clues, but it's anonymous, it's faceless. What can the victim do in this case? Because escalating it internally may not be able to reveal who is the identity of that person behind the keyboard warrior username.
So just thinking about it, most companies will not be so huge that you can't identify where messages are coming from if it's sent on internal platforms. Right, but if it's sent through a third-party platform like LinkedIn, then even if you report inside the company, you can't really prove that it's this person. So a lot of platforms. So then you're taking it out of the workplace in a way. Most platforms such as LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, they have a reporting function in the platform itself. So as you have to go in there, find the reporting function, find the rules of engagement, of the website, and say this person has harassed me. These are the examples of why it's harassment. This goes against your policies. And I mean, the platforms can do things to block them, remove their profile. But the real challenge has been this person will just set up another profile. It's like the Hydra, the mythological, you cut off one hit of the snake, another one just grows back. That is a real challenge that regulators all over the world are asking themselves, how do we deal with it? I think some of the new laws being proposed by Parliament, hopefully, will address that, where they can compel the platforms to either reveal the identity of these people or at least deal with these anonymous type of profiles a little better than is currently being dealt with. But yes, it's a good question and a big challenge, which I think has no 100% answer.
Are you referring to the Austria law that was just talked about, and I think it was just passed in Parliament this month?
Yes, that's right. Yes, it's a really wonderful piece of legislation. What they will do is they will set up a new online safety commission called the OSC, which will look at primarily at this issue, right? Dealing with online harms, dealing with complaints. So they will receive complaints from the public on a certain types of online harms. There's a list of 13 types of online harms. I think they're going to start with, I can't remember the exact number, maybe 4 of the more common ones, including harassment. And they will take these complaints and then contact the platforms or the perpetrator and make directions, take it down. Or they will allow the victim to post a reply. And the idea is for any failure to comply with such a direction, so the person is ordered to take down something and he doesn't, it could be a criminal offense. So they're being much more quick about the recourse and showing that it's really serious. If you don't comply, you are guilty of an offense. So I think it sends the right signals. It gives the victims far more access to justice in a way.
At the end of the day, I guess execution is going to be key, because until we see the first few cases being implemented under this new act or this new law, and the harassers being brought to justice or really dealt with actual repercussions, then future harassers will think twice. But if not, then hopefully it will not just be one of those paper policies that organizations have, but employees don't feel it really serves them. If this is implemented well, I think, it could be a good step.
I have all faith that it will be. I think it will. The commission will be set up by maybe June. And I understand that the government is really putting the weight behind it, building up a proper team of investigators who know what they're doing. So when they receive the complaints, they act well and they act fast, and they inspire trust in the population. And by making, failure to comply a criminal offense, they've been very clear that this is what we think is right and wrong, at least from the legal framework perspective. Sometimes it's very important for the law to take a stand and send a signal. It will take some time for the values to trickle down into society, but they invariably will.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights, Simran. This was a great discussion. We hope that you have learned lots. And if you're facing workplace harassment, online harassment, or you know of any friends and loved ones who are going through this situation, share with them this episode so they know that there are ways for them to seek help and recourse, whether it is through She Cares, it's through TAFAP, or even looking at how this new bill will be implemented in the next few months could offer hope to victims who may no longer have to struggle and accept this as part of their fate in that company or online. My name is Dawn, signing off on this episode of Wise and Shine. And Alex?
Yes, if you're not already following us on socials, please head on down to www.thefinancialcoconut.com and leave your email address there so that you will be kept informed of episodes when we launch.
We also appreciate the listeners, those of you who have shared your feedback that helped to inform some of the questions that came up in today's episode. So please feel free to write into us, leave us a comment, and if there's any other things that you would like us to see explore on Wise and Shine, just drop us a note and you might just see it in a future episode. If not, we'll see you on the next one. Thank you for tuning in today. Goodbye.